There are still too many companies that don't pay enough attention to their accounts payable function. The end result is money right out the door. Stick around while we examine AP practices that will directly impact your bottom line, and not in a good way. I'm Mary Schaefer, founder of AP Now and host of Accounts Payable Soundbites, the program where we discuss simple and complex accounts payable issues in short, concise soundbites. Today we're going to discuss when it's okay to ignore your accounts payable function and what happens when you do. Two of the biggest problems, and you're going to hear me come back to this on more than one occasion, related to ignoring the accounts payable function are fraud and duplicate payments. And before you say, oh, if we make a duplicate payment, doesn't the supplier automatically return the duplicate payment? The answer to that is no. Most of them don't. In fact, it's rare that the vendor returns it. Now, what some of them will do is they issue a credit memo, but your company may or may not get that credit memo. And we've got a whole other video on that, and we'll link to it down in the show notes. We're not here to talk about credit memos. Just know that once you make a duplicate payment, you're probably going to have to either hire somebody to recover it or going to have to spend some time and effort on your own part to recover it. So again, nothing that adds to the bottom line. And again, even when those credit memos are issued, you don't necessarily get them. Okay. I'm going to move off that little issue. The next thing that we have when the accounts payable function is ignored is that typically then there are inefficient practices in the accounts payable function, and they don't optimize their processes using best practices and technology. All this, the inefficiencies tend to lead to duplicate payments. And even if they don't, even if your manual processes are really good, you usually will need extra people to handle them, extra time, extra person power, if you will. And this translates into extra costs. And that's not a good thing when we talk about bottom line. Okay, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to talk about the regulatory compliance impact of ignoring your accounts payable function. When you don't have complete regulatory compliance, which you often won't if you're not paying really close attention to the accounts payable function, this can result in fines and penalties, especially with the IRS, especially when we're talking about 1099s, which most of your accounts payable departments will have responsibility for issuing. Not only that, you'll get B notices, which are a royal pain in the you-know-what. And all of these require a lot of manual efforts to rectify. And you also have to follow cumbersome steps to do so. And I'm not only talking about 1099s, although that's certainly the lion's share of them. You can also have regulatory compliance issues with unclaimed property, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, OFAC, etc. So all of these, none of them a good thing. Also, if you end up in the newspaper because of them, the negative impact on that and having to explain to the board of directors just exactly how this happened is not a good thing. Okay, I could talk for quite a bit of time about that, but I'll spare you. Weak results will result in, as we said, more duplicate payments and possibly more fraud. It just makes fraud a little easier to perpetrate. And also, along with this means weak controls. There's the possibility of being dinged in your regular audit and being written up in the management letter, which is never a good situation for anybody. And if you have a Sarbanes-Oxley audit, you can get dinged in that also. Other things that might go wrong if you ignore your accounts payable department. In general, you'll end up with poor morale within the department. This can lead to frayed vendor relations with people in other departments. Relations with these people can also become frayed when their choice vendor, their favorite vendor, if you will, doesn't get paid on time. And then, of course, your vendor relations get frayed because vendors are never happy when they're not paid on time. So this can lead to a lot of unnecessary disputes between your accounts payable staff and the rest of the department, and sometimes outsiders, not your key suppliers, but suppliers. So in case you haven't guessed, the answer to the question in the title and the one that we proposed in the beginning, when is it okay to ignore your accounts payable department or your accounts payable function? The answer to that is never. It's never okay to ignore it. The consequences are never good. It's a misconception to think that you can ignore it without having a bottom line cost to your organization. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to misconceptions about accounts payable. We discuss 8 others in episode 139 entitled Accounting Misconceptions About Accounts Payable. There's a link to it down below in the show notes, and on YouTube, a link will appear momentarily. As always, I greatly appreciate your thumbs up, your comments, your shares, and your subscribes.